Firstly, I'd like to introduce the panel for today. So I'm Lee Wallace, the Course Director of Sport and Exercise for the undergraduate program. I've got with us here, you can see in the screen there, we've got Rob Bow, the Deputy Head of School Teaching and Learning.
Hello all.
We've got Katie Slattery, a lecturer within our program, also comes to us with a wealth of industry experience. And we've got one of our best students, Tiana, who's in our honours program now, but the undergrad sport and exercise science last year. So she's going to give us some bit of a take on the student experience there as well. So you can ask questions throughout, but as we'll be presenting, the easiest time to answer those questions is in the Q&A section at the end of the session. So you can see on your screens there, you'll see that Q&A button. Any questions that you might have, just pop it into the chat and we'll answer them. Some questions you might get a written response back, and others we might group together if there's themes there. And between the panelists, the four of us, we'll try and answer those questions as best that we can. So why might you, about sport and exercise science? So what is it? It's a professional field. It involves teaching, training, or business, anything related to those things with sport and exercise. So it's quite a diverse field. There's a lot of variety of things that you can do in there. If we look at our rankings, just to give ourselves a plug, I guess, at the beginning of this session, why not? We're actually 29th in the world on the QS World Rankings for subjects in 2021. So considering how many universities, that's quite high up. We're doing very well. And we've got a 5 out of 5 excellent in research there as well. So that's well above world standard there. So we've got both experience at a high level of both teaching and research. We do sport exercise for a number of different reasons, and depending on which course you're interested in, it might have to do with the sport and exercise science, so people that like that scientific approach, that applied focus. It might have to do with health, rehabilitation, anything within that sport and exercise context. Prescribing, delivering exercise in any way, testing, all that type of stuff might fit into that sport and exercise science banner. Then you've also got the Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Management, which is all things blending sport and business. So there's a lot of diversity within that field there as well. People that are interested in business of sport and or even clients, so the business of clients or managing athletes and things like that. So a real broad range of different things that we can do there. So I'm going to pass over to Rob for a little bit, who is our Deputy Head of School Teaching and Learning, as I said before, to give us a little bit of a run through of the structure of the course. And thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So Lee's given the broad overview of the 2 degrees there. I'm going to break that down into 3 parts and give you a little bit more detail about where they can lead. And Katie will expand on that a little bit later on. So the standard sport and exercise science degree has 2 options in terms of majors. There is an exercise science major and a no specific major option. The exercise science major is accredited with ESSA. So ESSA stands for Exercise and Sport Science Australia. They're our governing body for sport and exercise courses, and that enables you to become an accredited exercise scientist, which simply means you can prescribe exercise to apparently healthy people in the community. Now, that degree also pathways into other options in the master's level, such as the high performance sport, the Master of Physiotherapy, which we know is a very popular pathway, or you can become an accredited exercise physiologist or sports scientist with further study. The no specific major option there pathways into the Master of High Performance Sport, but it was designed to give you the option to go on global exchange, which is a semester overseas of study in lieu of being at UTS for one of those sessions. The second option that's already come up now in red is the Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science with an exercise therapy major. Now, it's the same sort of degree, but it's actually a different UAC code. And you can see there that the ATAR for that degree is around 99, whereas the ATAR for the first one I spoke about was around 86. Now, this particular exercise therapy major, which stems from a different UAC code, is a guaranteed pathway into the Master of Physiotherapy. That's why it's very popular, and that's why the ATAR mark is so high. So students can go straight into the Master of Physiotherapy, provided they maintain a credit average and conduct a successful internal interview. But the other accreditations with ESSA and the other pathways are also available to that degree. The third option is the Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Management, slightly lower ATAR. It's not accredited with ESSA, but it's for those people who want to learn more about the business and manage the experience of sport and exercise. It certainly has a global exchange option, and it also pathways into the Master of Physiotherapy with the correct electives, as well as the Master of High Performance Sport. So 3 separate options there. Now, students often choose to combine their degrees with international studies. So whether you're doing the exercise science or exercise management degree, you can add 2 more years and include a Bachelor of International Studies. So it would be 5 years full-time, and the 4th of those years would be overseas. So you get to learn another language, another culture, and you get to experience 1 full year in another country, which a lot of students really do enjoy. Or you could combine it with the Bachelor of Creative Intelligence and Innovation, which adds 1 more year, so 4 years in total, which gives you access to more innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial outcomes. Some of our students like to do both degrees, and it is possible with the right electives and structuring your course accordingly to complete both the Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science and Sport and Exercise Management degrees in 4 years. Now, we can't guarantee that, but most students who are keen to do that have done so successfully. So what's involved in our courses? Well, we take a blended learning approach. So it's a mixture of online modules and face-to-face learning. A lot of the exercise science is done in laboratories, but both the exercise science and exercise management type content includes laboratories and tutorial work. We also pride ourselves on the practical experience. So there is an extensive internship and practical program built into the 3rd year that prepares you to work with real clients and real people and real organisations. We encourage group work. We encourage independent study as needed. And obviously, university is a great time of your life. The campus life and extracurricular activities, the clubs and societies, we really encourage you to get involved with. School's tough. Once you get to university, if you stay on top of your work, you can really enjoy that period of your life, as well as learn skills at uni and in industry. So what's the content in the degree? Well, the main content stems from structural anatomy and biomechanics, and these lead into physiology, strength and conditioning, learning how to prescribe exercise. Students enjoy the sports psychology and nutrition components, and at the more advanced level, exercise rehabilitation. We also have some sociology type subjects, assessment, prescription and delivery of exercise. And for the management people, managing professional sport, sport marketing and sport media are major parts of the course. Now, we have a very new and sophisticated facility at Moore Park. It's only 3 years old. It's an amazing $70 million building that has been designed, purpose-built for our course. And we share that building with Rugby Australia as well. And we're surrounded by incredible industry, such as the Sydney Cricket Ground, the Sydney Swans. Occasionally, we have some of the T20 clubs come into our building and share some of our facilities with us. But within that building, we have exercise physiology labs, motor learning labs, biomechanics labs. It is a phenomenal facility which will enable you to have an opportunity to learn all about your sport and exercise management and sport and exercise science. And certainly you're most welcome to come and have a look at the facility when allowed. So there's a couple more images. The one on that left there, if you just go back, Lee, you can see that there is a rooftop running track. So part of our learning happens on the roof, city views in the background, but we've got a designated running track there that enables you to capture some of the data and learn in that beautiful environment on the roof.
I think that really some of these pictures don't do it justice. It really is a magnificent facility. As you look through there's an indoor, there's an indoor basketball court there, this strength and conditioning gym, fantastic recomposition lab where you do DEXA scans. Really, like, one of the main strengths of this program really is those facilities in just this perfect hub. Fantastic.
And we all love teaching there, Lee. It's a thrill for us to work and teach and research there. It's something that we feel very privileged about, and look forward to our students coming to class and sharing that with them. So I'm going to pass on to Katie now.
Oh, thank you, Rob. What you can see here is just a few examples of the professional placements that you can do through UTS. As Rob mentioned, we're right in the hub of sport in Sydney. So you can see in the picture, we've got students working with the Rugby Sevens teams, with the Sydney Swans, and also more recently, we've really invested in a work integrated learning team where they actually will coordinate placements for you. And these may be in professional sport, they may also be in a health setting. And as part of your third year, where one of the keys of work integrated learning is you're going to bring together all the knowledge and the skills that you've learned in the first 2 years and practically apply them. And we have got a telehealth practice and also project-based learning. So these are just more examples of some of our industry engagement. As you can see, a range of sports, not just in Australia, internationally as well. And so plenty of opportunity for you to, I suppose, experience what working in sport is really like from people that really do it.
Yeah, I think that Katie makes an excellent point there. You've got obviously the integration of all these fantastic collaborations that we work with, but we've also got that teaching staff intertwined through all their research into all these different areas too, which just really strengthens both your involvement in that sport and exercise sort of area, but also the teaching coming down from your lecturers as well, which in some ways have a lot to do with these clubs. So I think that's it's an excellent advantage.
Well, and I suppose to go one step further, like most of those clubs that you can see on the screen in the last slide, they've got UTS alumni working for them now as well.
That's right. So opportunities that they've done something during their undergrad that's gone on to land them in some kind of job or something down the line in a career that they really it was a dream job for them.
Okay, so I suppose if you do decide to come to UTS, we pride ourselves on really supporting the students. So we've got a student centre which is there to help you with any questions that you've got about your course. We also have higher education and language presentation support, which is called HELPS, timetable planning, online learning, which is really opening doors and letting you do uni at your own pace. And we also have a excellent library with lots of databases, online resources, and really helpful librarians. And so I suppose what do people when they finish our degree look like? They look like Tiana. She could explain a little bit more. But I think what all these attributes are really showing is just that you don't just have knowledge, you can apply your knowledge. You've got the skills to be adaptable. You understand the basic mechanisms, so you can adapt to any situation, especially through our work integrated learning. Your communication and your ability to just step straight into the real world will be there. You can critically think. you're ethical and responsible, and I suppose all these tie into having like strong leadership skills, whilst also like as UTS as a university, we really do pride ourselves on Indigenous cultural respect as well. So what type of jobs can you get? Won't read them all out, but in the sport industry, sports scientist, high performance manager, you can continue on and be a sort of a tertiary lecturer, sports coaching and leadership, athlete development. So in the sport industry, you can go from high performance to grassroots level. In the health and fitness industry, that's where exercise scientists, personal training, exercise rehabilitation, there's really a range of jobs to do with exercise that you can progress to in the future. And then if we've got sport and exercise management careers, so within the sport industry, you've got event management, sports marketing, working for NSOs. When I was working at NSWIS, we had a large number of UTS graduates that were sports consultants and sort of program managers. You can go into player welfare, sports media, sports analytics. Then if you look to the health and fitness industry, that's where you can be a fitness centre manager, look into occupational health and safety management, just to name a few things.
All right, well, thanks, Katie. I'll take it from here and talk about what this can also prepare you for as part of postgraduate programs and articulating degrees. So first one is people interested in Masters of High Performance Sport and or Applied Exercise Physiology. These degrees can prepare you for those. So a Sport and Exercise Management degree with it, depending on which degree you've done and the electives that you choose, sort of open up different options for you. So if you went into the Sport and Exercise Management degree and you picked specific electives in third year, it can prepare you for Masters of our High Performance pathway. Now, important to note with these pathways, they're competitive pathways. So looking at it, none of it's like guaranteed, but you know, based on mark, interview, things like that, experience, a lot of different factors come into play here, but it can definitely prepare you for those postgraduate degrees. Now, another one here is our Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science, which is the exercise therapy major, also preparing you for that high performance sport pathway, and may also prepare you for a Masters of Applied Exercise Physiology. Now, we don't actually offer the Applied Exercise Physiology at UTS, but it can open up those gateways for you at other universities as well. Finally, the Sport and Exercise Science with the exercise therapy major, again, can lead you on to that a Master of High Performance Sport at UTS or elsewhere, and can also leave the door open for access to Masters of Applied Exercise Physiology elsewhere. Now, a big one that a lot of people are always interested in is in the physiotherapy articulation. Again, it depends on what degree you've done and the electives that you've done within it. So if you did a Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Management with select electives, so given the selective, that means that we've got a range of electives. You would have to pick specific electives within that degree. That can make you give you a competitive chance at this application process. Again, during this pathway, the admission is not guaranteed, but based on, again, grade, experience, number of slots at that given time, a lot of factors really you know, come into play here, but yes, it is possible to prepare for that pathway. When you look at the Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science with the Exercise Science major, again, a pathway to the Master of Physiotherapy. That is, again, a competitive application, admission not guaranteed, but, you know, with, you know, building out your portfolio, interviews, grades, experience, can leave you with a great chance of getting into that. Now, a little bit different is our Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science with the Exercise Therapy major. So this is the UTS Master of Physiotherapy guaranteed pathway, subject to grades, credit average and successful interview, which happens in the second year. Now, this is the most competitive, so you'll notice from Rob's breakdown of the previous year's ATARs and stuff. This would have the highest within that program out of these that you see on the screen. And there's competitive in the amount of spots there are available. So there's less spots available in this particular degree, but if you do get into that degree, then you've got that guaranteed pathway subject to those credit average and successful interview in the second year. So if you're not sure, this is, there's a lot of different ways to get to different places. So I know that was just a whole lot. You're thinking, which one's me? So really just, depending on what you're interested in, look at read the different guides so you get a real understanding of exactly what you need to do. Anything's possible, but just go through what the actual rules are for each one, what you need to do, the electives you need to pick to get to where you want to be. Now, when we look at the alumni success, we always love telling our success stories. So we've had some really great alumni. These next couple of slides I'm going to show you is we've just picked a handful of our previous students. So these are all people that came through our sport and exercise science or management program. You can see Katie there on the screen, track endurance coach for cycling program, New South Wales Institute of Sport. So she came to us, did her undergraduate and then PhD at UTS. Then went away for a while, got that industry experience. She's nodding on screen there. Worked with NSWIS and elite cycling teams, and then came back, and now she's combining that industry experience with her job also as a lecturer. We've got Rob Spurs up there. This is one of our great success stories. He was the physical performance manager and head strength and conditioning coach for Sydney Swans for like almost 10 years. I think it's he's really been up there for a long time. You've got other things like operations managers at Swans. We even have TV personalities in Amy Wilkins come through the program. We've got, I'm not even going to name them all. It's exciting when I start reading, I get excited. I'm thinking, geez, we've done all this. Like if you actually go through and have a look at, some of these jobs, you're thinking, man, they really are top jobs in the sport and exercise field. High performance director for the Cleveland Cavaliers, NBA, like depending on what sport you're interested in, really it just opens up all kinds of opportunities. Oh, I mean, look at this ones here. You've got Johan Billsborough, Boston Celtics, Director of Sports Science at Boston Celtics and New England Patriots. That is one of the big success stories there. Those jobs are just, fantastic. So, look, I've just named a few there, but if you've got a chance to go through and read some of those success stories, some out there, we're very proud of them, and they regularly still work with us throughout the program, and it's a great way of learning. Both, they're out there in the world now and bringing back what they've learned often to us as well. So it's fantastic. So how do I apply? Well, depending on where you're coming from, what you're doing. So recent school leavers, you apply through UAC with your ATAR, and also looking at, there's opportunities to qualify for additional UTS point schemes. So definitely look at those point schemes. You can get up to 5 points automatically applied based on your performance in select Year 12 subjects. So ATAR plus, potential for bonus points there. Non-recent school leavers, this is a competitive entry where you're looking at previous academic experience coupled with any tertiary education that you might have and or any other experience that you might have had in the industry. So it's a different form of entry, but you get in all the same if that's you. We're looking at all those different things in the entry. So where do you apply? You apply through UAC. You can see there on the screens the UAC at edu.au. And remember, just those applications close the end of September. So just be sure you watch that date line. You don't want to be late. Also look up if there's opportunities for early entry and things like that. For all those real fine details, really go into that UAC and look at that early entry to see whether you're eligible for one of those subjects or early entry into those courses as well. So that's that's a very fast run through. Probably doesn't do it all justice, but rather than getting into the nitty gritty, we're going to open the floor to some questions. And so you've got an opportunity here to write any questions into that Q&A box, and we'll be scrolling through, doing our best to answer them. We haven't done one thing, just while we're waiting on some of those questions to get through. I might just ask Tiana, as our student representative. What did you like best about the subject, your time in your degree?
Definitely the building. Being able to come to uni every day in that amazing building was a absolute bonus. And the fact that it was separate to the rest of the city campus, I found created a bit more of a homey experience. I think all the academics and staff were absolutely so welcoming right from the beginning, and I felt at home as soon as I walked in the doors. And another thing that was a huge positive was the hands-on experience that the students were provided from day dot. I remember my first anatomy lesson ever. I was thrown right into a room with a whole bunch of different models, and yeah, just really set the scene, I guess, for a very interactive and practical degree.
All right, that's so I'll just take through some of these. You can see the questions are starting to pile up here, so I'll just take a couple at random here. You mentioned international placements. I'll type the. You mentioned international placements. Are there any overseas universities that you have a relationship with? I'm going to throw this over to you, Rob.
Yeah, so there is a department at UTS that looks after all this, and they do have specific relationships with certain universities. I'm not going to list them off the top of my head, but that is a good. If that's relevant and significant to you, it's a good question to ask the International Studies Group. But our students have been to parts of Europe, parts of USA, parts of Asia. They are the main sorts of places. Someone's also asked along the same lines about the international studies. Are there pathways if you aren't able to get the 96 ATAR? With all these things, if you don't get the ATAR, you want to get into some sort of university degree and do well. And if you have 1 year of successful study, you can often reapply through UAC, and they'll rework your ATAR in accordance with your results. And that may help you get into a course like this. So we would suggest you get into the 3-year degree to start with, and try and get really good results in your first year, and then reassess after that.
All right. Well, while I've got you there, Rob, this one here was mentioned before about studying both sport and exercise management as well as sport and exercise science. How do students pursue this?
Yeah, so essentially, we have got information on our website to show students how to strategically work through their degree so that they can complete both those degrees in 4 years. But it does require you to reapply for the second degree through UAC. Now, if you complete the first degree successfully, you will get into the second degree. If you complete the first degree with several fails throughout the course or have very poor results, then you may not get into the second degree. But essentially, getting through the first degree and then applying through UAC, you're virtually certain of getting into the second degree. And then the remaining subjects, you have to do a minimum of 8 subjects to complete that second degree. So if you Google and search our website, you'll see how much detail we've put into helping students do that. I'll answer the one about professional placements to do with volleyball as well. Because
Rob's a volleyballer, by the way, everyone.
I used to be.
Yeah.
So sport and exercise management students will do the internship, and you can choose whatever you want. You can use your own contacts or you can use our contacts. For sport and exercise science, you have to meet the requirements of the ESSA guidelines. So if there are apparently healthy people involved in volleyball, which I'm sure there are, you could certainly work with volleyball athletes, and then you could do the remainder of your placement with a volleyball association. That would be fine. I'm not sure if we have any in our list, but students can organise their own, so there's no problem there. I might answer while I see another one in my domain. Can you switch from the exercise science major to the exercise therapy major if you don't get the required ATAR? That is actually quite difficult because the ATAR for exercise therapy is very high. So you would need to be outstanding in the exercise science degree with the exercise science major to have a chance of achieving that. It's much harder to do it that way. but obviously getting an ATAR of 99 is also difficult. But it just reflects how competitive and how highly desired that particular pathway is.
Well, here's one I'm going to get Katie to answer, being one of our leading researchers here. What is the honours program and what types of research can you do?
So yeah, the honours program is an additional year after you finish your undergrad. And really the research you can do is anything to do with sport and exercise science. So for example, one of my honours students, he's had an embedded role at NSWIS with the swimming program, and his research project is having a look at and really closely analysing what swimming training they do, sort of like using heart rate monitoring. Other subjects, well, Tiana herself, she's doing honours. Do you want to tell everyone what you're doing?
Sure. So my research is looking at high intensity multimodal training, which encompasses things like CrossFit, functional training, HIIT, boot camp, and group circuits. And I'm looking at the long-term effects of that on health and fitness outcomes, as well as how people are responding in terms of like their psychology and the subjective response to exercise.
And doing a fantastic job as well. What have you got? About 4 months left. The hardest 4 months there to
10
go.
weeks.
Well, what is it? October. Oh, Jesus.
10 weeks.
Yep. 10 weeks. All right, video to move on.
But I suppose essentially with the honours, it's all about linking up with a supervisor that's got expertise in the area, and you can work with them towards the research that interests you the most.
Yeah, I think this first one, this question we had, what is the difference of sport and exercise science and sport and exercise management versus the Bachelor of Sport and Exercise, sorry, let me start again. Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Management versus the Bachelor of Management in Sports Business. I might have a crack at answering that. It's really, I guess, the amount of business, if you did the Bachelor of Management Sports Business, the amount of business is higher in that degree. What our Bachelor of Exercise and Sports Management offers is a more of a mix between the actual sports science and management. So you're picking up a lot of those sports science subjects. So the knowledge that you have about actual sports science is greater, but then you're adding the management flavour to it. So the major difference would be Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Management, a mix of the human body, how it works, all that with the business and management side of things, compared to the management sports business, which is a lot more of the management and not so much of the actual human body and the components that place on that. I think that'd be the best way to describe it. Rob?
Yeah, no, that's correct, yes. So we want our sport and exercise management students to understand the human body in general terms, so that if they're managing a facility or exercise, they have an understanding of both the business processes and what the client is experiencing. And that's probably the main difference. The next question is probably a good one for you to answer, Lee. And it's, would this be the course to do if you had an interest in exercise physiology?
I mean, absolutely. If you had a real interest in exercise physiology, it'd be you'd be looking at the sport and exercise science. It'd be the better fit there. There's a lot of subjects within that degree that is targeted specifically around exercise physiology. We've got, you start off with physiological basis of human movements type subject, looking at the cells and structures within the body. You've got some basic anatomy in there, moving into functional anatomy. Then you start actual exercise physiology as a subject, moving right up to applied exercise physiology. And in these types of subjects, you've got people running on treadmills, you're taking heart rates, you're taking lactates, you're looking at their temperature, and then you can we also do experiments in labs where you're putting people under different conditions. So heat labs, or you might be wearing a heat suit. We've got one of the environments that we have is an environment room within the building where we crank the heat up on people, so you sweat dripping out of you and see what happens to you under different conditions. So really, if you're into exercise physiology, there are so many questions within the within the degree that you would find quite exciting, thinking all about the body in different types of environments.
I might take the next couple of questions quickly, Lee, because they're starting to pile up. So there is a question about employment after graduation and what percentage. So we like to see around 60% get employed. That varies from year to year, but some of our students also use the year after they finish just to explore the world and have some time to themselves, and then their employment opportunities will come later. How many students are typically in these courses? So we would take approximately 250 in sport and exercise science, let's say 100 in sport and exercise management, and perhaps 40 odd in the exercise therapy major. How much control do students have over where their placement is? Quite a bit in the internship, almost 100%. For the exercise science and ESSA accredited pathways, you have to meet the requirements of ESSA. So you could still have that control yourself. We're happy for you to organise that, or you can fit in with our programs. And in fact, we've been doing telehealth in recent times because of the COVID scenario and to maintain the accreditation. And in terms of contact hours for both degrees, well, they're the same pretty much. There's typically 4 subjects a session. A session typically goes for 12 weeks plus exams, and you would typically do 4 subjects each session, and each subject of actual online and face-to-face content would be about 3 hours. So it's 12 to 13 hours of actual formal learning, but for every hour of formal learning, we recommend an additional 2 hours of your own learning and practice. So you can do the maths on that.
So it's an interesting one. It says, how's practical work affected with COVID? Oh man, we've had a range of, we've had to adjust in all kinds of different ways, and depending on what stage of COVID are we talking about. Everything we've done is, with the health of everyone first and following the health advice. So we've had situations where we've had to move some classes online at different stages. We've been able to do practical-based things, but with social distancing and mask requirements and everything in place. So depending on what's on, but everything we do is always under the health advice to make sure everyone's safe.
Katie, would you like to answer this question about what if I'm not entirely sure what I want to do in health and fitness? So what advice would you give to figure this out?
I suppose if you like health and fitness, this is a course that would help you in a career for health and fitness. But understanding also that there's other pathways and courses that you could do. So I think it's really hard to give you something specific other than to say that, I started when I was an undergrad student. I actually did the sport and exercise management, and I didn't know really what I wanted to do, but I knew that I really loved exercise and sport. And so I'm pretty sure that doing this degree is going to give me a qualification, and it's an area that I really enjoy. So I can't go too wrong.
Thanks, Katie. There's a question about part-time study. Yes, you can. You can get into your degree and you can spread it out over 4, 5 or 6 years if you want. There is a limit of 10 years, not that anyone goes that far. And the next question, for sport and exercise management, are you able to pursue careers where you are technical directors of clubs or manage the programs for sporting organisations? Absolutely. A university degree is a higher form of education than what you could achieve through coaching type awards. However, we always encourage students to specialise as appropriate and in terms of what their interests are, and to follow through the pathways that each particular club requires, if there are such things, to meet their requirements as well. But you'd certainly be prepared for that.
Looking at the course and pathways that some of our alumni mentioned, really those alumni got into those places in all kinds of different ways. In all kinds of different ways. In the 2 specific cases we've got here, Johan, he came into our postgraduate program, and Tom Kempton was a sport and exercise science then went through an honours program, ended up doing a PhD in exercise physiology, and now working with the who do you work with? I can't. Carlton, yeah. So really diverse backgrounds, to be honest, and all of those different pathways. They all came. Everyone had a different approach, starting off with different places and ending up in different places. You can get anywhere if you really want it.
We've answered the question about choosing your placements. A few people have asked that. So what do the assessments look like in these degrees? Well, assessments vary from exams, of which there are less and less, to practical assessments. Katie, do you want to maybe describe a couple of the practical assessments in your area? Because they're the interesting ones.
Yeah, for sure. So in exercise prescription, two of the major assessment pieces. One is a practical skills test where you, as the name suggests, we assess how you take skin folds, how you run testing, how you deliver strength and conditioning coaching. And then the other major assessment piece is the training project, where you're partnered into groups of 2 and you get to develop an evidence-informed training program for your clients. So you get the experience of really understanding what the literature says and practically applying it, but in a really safe setting, because it's just on one of your classmates. So they're the 2 key things that we look for in exercise prescription. And I'm pretty sure many of the I think you'll have prac skill tests with most of your subjects from second year onwards.
Someone has asked about whether students can use the facilities for recreation. Yes, we have an indoor gym, like a sports hall, that can definitely be used for recreation. When it comes to the strength and conditioning room, which is an amazing room, not for recreation, but you can for learning purposes. So essentially, in a coaching sense, where you and your other students or peers goes in there, and one is exercising, the other one is observing or instructing or giving feedback, you can do that after you have completed or at some stage during your first year of study. We allow that.
And those facilities are used heavily in classes too. Like one of the main advantages of this degree is the use of the facilities within all our classes. So we're regularly in the gym, the sports hall, using all the facilities to help with our learning.
There's a question about exercise science major getting into physiotherapy. I'll answer this from the perspective of both exercise science major and people in the sports management degree, because they both pathway into physio. It is competitive. Our students, because they are familiar with UTS and they get a good training through our degree, they do have a reasonable chance, but there are a lot of applicants. So we might get 10 to 15 students through from those degrees into physiotherapy from each year. For the exercise therapy major, the first couple of times everyone got in. I think last year a couple missed out because of their interview. But otherwise, the odds are very, very strong once you've got into that exercise therapy major. The AEP question, Lee, would you like to answer that?
AEP, I mean, with a career, pursuing a career in AEP, you need to fulfill the requirements. So a lot of that is done through the course, but then in order to get your AEP, there's additional studies and things that you need to add on. So this is a great starting place. They all require this as a starting place. And then extra educations and add on in that clinical setting to be awarded with your AEP. So great start. Gets you 3/4 of the way there, and then tacking on a little bit afterwards gets you the rest of the way.
You can't do a master's in AEP unless you've done an undergraduate, which completed the AES. So that's the pathway part which we've set up. Is it hard for mature age students to obtain a placement? No, mature age students probably find it easier to obtain a placement because they've got more experience and industry experience. So we welcome them. We've had people in their 60s do our course, and do it successfully. And people who are medical practitioners come and do our course as well, because they want to learn about exercise as health.
Some of the best students are often the mature age students. They've gone away and they've really honed in on what they want to do, and they come back and they're hard to beat if they're in your year. Okay, what are we up to?
Do you need to have a PhD to get better jobs working with professional athletes and clubs? Katie, what do you think?
Well, I saw that question and I had a look at our alumni, and most of them do have a PhD, and most of them started a PhD but haven't finished. That includes Rob Spurs. So look, it's not a requirement, but it is a great foot in the door. If you can do an industry embedded PhD, you get not only the benefit of understanding research and how to, I suppose, problem solve and understand data and whether or not the exercise or whatever intervention you're doing is having a real impact or not. But in saying that, there are plenty of people working in sport without a PhD.
Yeah, I think we always have the dilemma of we get students and they begin doing a PhD, and then that PhD might be embedded in like a sporting environment or with a team, and then the team thinks, geez, I want to employ this person because they're so good, and then they're caught in the middle, like, do I keep working, finish the PhD? Often they try and juggle them both, and usually they get there. It just takes a little bit longer because they're working and studying at the same time. But in those instances, they end up with their dream job. So it's a lot of success stories come from that way.
There's a nice specific question here about whether you need to do the international studies degree to be able to get jobs in major sporting competitions, such as the Olympics and the World Cup. You certainly don't have to, but that would be the sort of space where it would definitely help, particularly if you've picked up another language through that 5-year degree. But there would be, it's not a compulsory thing, no, it just would be a helpful thing. And another person has asked about the ESSA qualification related to the sport and exercise science degree. It's considered an AES, so accredited exercise scientist. You have to do additional work to get the sports scientist accreditation with ESSA beyond your Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science degree.
Well, I think we are done here today. We're going to have to conclude this session now, but I just like to thank all the panelists, Rob, Tiana, Katie, for being with us today. All your insights, I'm sure, will help those prospective students out there to make a decision. Just on your screen, you can see other sessions and open days available at UTS. So there's one-on-one live chats where you can talk to sport and exercise science students with the times and dates there. 2 p.m. info session for those interested in international studies, and 2 o'clock for the Bachelor of Creative Intelligence and Innovation. So I'd like to conclude this session, but thanks everyone. We look forward to seeing you in the future, even though we can't actually see you now, but we look forward to seeing you in the future if you choose UTS Sport and Exercise Science as your preference. Thanks everyone for coming today.
See you later all the best with the rest of school, and we look forward to seeing you at UTS. Take care.